Welcome to our first episode of Realtors Influencing Other Realtors. I'm Travis Anderson. I'm so excited. I'm here with Stacy Peterson. Believe it or not, this is our second recording because I screwed up the first time. And Stacy, welcome.
Thank you. Hey, it just makes this is real life, right? So sometimes it records, sometimes it doesn't, but I'm excited to be here.
Me too. Thanks so much. So why don't we start, Stacy? Why don't you tell me about your first year in real estate?
Yeah. So my first year in real estate, I would describe as I feel like I was confused. I didn't know really what to do. There's a lot of people to follow. I didn't naturally have a database because I was, 24 years old when I got licensed. I've been a realtor for 20 years now, but 24-year-olds aren't really running out to buy a whole bunch of houses. And so my first year, I sold 2 homes. That was it. And I was part-time part of the year, full-time the end of the year. But, that was a humbling experience. I thought I'd get my license and, people would just be flying out of the woodwork wanting to work with me. But, that's not necessarily the case. And then my next year, I went to 28 sides. And so a much better year, definitely different strategy, but that's kind of my first, call it 24 months in business.
That's a big leap. How did you go from the 2 sales to the 28?
Yeah, there's a couple things that I did. I was really trying to remember, to give you guys the exact, and I'm definitely an open book. So I want to be, completely transparent and honest, but, there was definitely 2 things. So number one, I started to create a newsletter and I sent my newsletter out every single month. And I sent this to people that would know my name. Like maybe they'd even know just my first name, or I met them somewhere like at work prior or something like that. Like anybody, they got my newsletter, and my newsletter was nothing special. I literally created on my Gateway 2000 computer. And I put a craft in it every month, but it went out consistently. And that was the key. Consistently, people were always hearing something from me, market stats, new homes that are listed from my company, and then, me. And then secondly, the really big thing was I had a couple friends that worked at this one company and I knew they were hiring. So I decided to put together a presentation that gave all the benefits of, what I could show them about the city, what I could help their family get integrated into in a tour if they'd allow me to be their realtor of choice. And then, of course, what I knew about their company so I could help them, the people coming in, feel good about the decision. So while one spouse was interviewing, I'm with the other one and, selling the city, selling the company, selling what their kids could do here. And then when we came together, talking about how as a family this could look like living here. And I ended up selling 28 homes the next year from that source. And so it was really an awesome opportunity for me.
Yeah, very, very neat. And then, so how do you go from that level of production? Because I know, we'll get to your peak, let's say, but how do you go from there to say maybe doubling or tripling that business?
Yeah. So there's a couple things. I feel like my personal ceiling was, somewhere between, call it 35 and maybe 60 homes a year. I'd kind of, bounce a little bit in there. And, at one time I was pregnant with my son. So it's my first baby, and I sold 48 homes my first 6 months. So let's say potentially that could have been an 80 sale year. But I was hitting the ceiling because I was forgetting things. I wasn't like calling the inspector quick enough, or even, if I was doing 2-step listings, right? They'd have to wait a week for me to come back with like a market analysis. What a waste of time. So I realized that I needed help. And so to go from, basically, let's just call it 30 sales a year to then hitting anything more than that, I needed leverage. And that came for me in an assistant. And so she would handle basically all the contract to close, put our listings in the newspaper thing, the booklet, the house booklet, send it out to our clients in an email, stuff like that. But all of that extra, client servicing and marketing was handled by her. And then to really gain leverage, I started to add agents. And so I created a team. And that then catapulted into bigger numbers. But me personally, I couldn't get much farther unless I had like a right hand person or an admin.
Yeah, that makes sense. So then you were able to get from, say, 28 to above your ceiling, which sounded like around 50
Yeah.
by adding an administrative person. And then, I mean, you've built a team and sold it. Why don't you tell us that story a little bit? How you went from your first admin to building, a larger team selling, quite a bit more real
Yeah.
estate.
Yes. So, with our team, one of the coolest things was I knew I wanted to help agents. I wanted their world to be better because they were part of mine. And so what that meant was, I was lucky to have these opportunities like this company, right, that I was able to integrate with. And I was able to, invest in newsletters and do open houses and all those things. But not every agent understood that or had those opportunities or maybe even wanted to take those risks. So to build a team for me was really exciting. And one of the cool things was I actually got some coaching early on for teams, and that opened my eyes completely. So one thing I forgot to tell you about when I started was I actually had an agent in my office that was a member of Star Power. And so immediately my eyes were open to what real estate could be. And so that kind of started my love for, hey, there's like more ways to automate things. There's more ways to get leverage. There's systems you can create around this business. And I love systems. So that was like speaking my language. And so then when I went to create my team, I kind of had this backbone of information. And so the first year, we put together the team. It was me and I had a business partner. And then we had one more agent. And then we had another agent that joined us way at the end of the year, but we had already hit about 100 sides. So 100 sales with, call it 3.5 of us and an admin. And that really was, we were like, whoa, this went fast. Can we continue to do it? And so how we continued to, just make these sales was the systems, of course, but then adding an agent. So we knew when we added an agent, we could add 24 sides, like no problem, ink on the paper, it's done. And that was through, training. We also had some leads we could give them, but it was a little bit of blind faith because again, I had heard this on like a stage or some kind of coaching that, oh, all my agents sell 24 houses a year. And I thought, wow, okay, well, that's the standard. All right. So I didn't know different. I didn't know any different. And so that was my expectation. And so that's what we sold to these agents coming in. And we created a fast start program, it was called, and it was a 90-day onboarding that would get them 6 deals in 90 days. And through that program, we built a lot of their confidence up, confidence, of course, in our own program. And we were just able to continue that momentum, if they stayed with us for the 12 months.
Yeah, that's awesome. So 24 sales in 12 months, and you're not guaranteeing it, but you're like, hey, if you do what we say, this will lead to this result. What were you saying? What did that fast track look like?
Yeah. So, yeah. And right. Is there an agent that didn't hit 24? Of course. Right. And there's some agents that left. So that might be a question like, oh, well, how come agents would leave your team if they could just sell 24 houses a year? But, sometimes agents don't want that kind of accountability. It was high accountability. How many conversations are you having? What are you doing with the opportunities that we're giving you? We had a lead pool that they could call from. They had to, read so many books, attend trainings. It was like highly one-on-one training for 2 hours a day. And then after that, they had other video training and open houses and, things like that. But, for some agents, that's not what they want. And so we realized quickly that we needed to have a job description that we could plug people into. So here's what our job is. If this fits you and we feel you're a fit, perfect, game on. If not, that's okay. Go do, what you need to and what you want to. And so that helped us. Instead of creating positions around people, we had a position that we could plug people into.
Oh, very neat. And it sounds like that position was, building a database that you're going to communicate with, holding some number of open houses, attending all of these trainings and growing yourself through books. You've got a lead funnel and then accountability.
100%. And what's funny about that? You saying that back to me is almost exactly what I did when I started, right? So we kind of do what we know.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of funny hearing you repeat it back. And here I thought I had to spend, millions and find out the new things. And really, it's probably what we already know. And we're just taking our skills and helping others, reach their potential.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, real briefly, tell me about where your team peaked and the production, and then how you went from there, transition into what you're currently doing and what your day looks like.
Okay. So our team went from 100 deals to 150 to 175 to 225, and then I actually sold my team, and that year I sold it, we were at 275. Our goal was 300. We came, just right short of it. But I sold my team because I knew my heart was in coaching, and I had already started coaching, and just realized I love being able at scale to help other businesses and also see what holes they have and help them identify it, because it's like a non-biased, third party that's looking into their business and showing them some gaps that could get them the results they want. So what it looks like today is, I coach agents and I recruit for my brokerage. But how that came about is once I sold my team, like I mentioned, I started coaching, became the director of coaching, CEO of that coaching company. And then now, like I mentioned, my position, or where I'm at now, coaching and recruiting. And I just love helping agents. I love, my goal always was I wanted agents to be able, their kids to say to them that their life was so much better, so much richer in terms of experiences and time with them because they were a realtor, instead of, opposite, which is, we don't spend any time with them. We're not looking them in the eyes and, things like that. So that's my goal, is to help realtors on a much shorter trajectory than mine was, help them get there.
Yeah, awesome. It's funny because whenever we ask these questions, or I go and I watch people on Family Reunion or Mega Camp, Stacy, it's like, oh, I did 2 deals, then 28, then 60, then 125. And, I'm just like so awesome, which you are amazing. But we know that there's struggles and challenges throughout that journey. And I'm just curious, like, what were some of those, really troubling times or biggest challenges that you had going from, your first year to kind of that last year that you sold the team?
Yeah. Well, as I was, okay, when I started real estate, I wasn't married, I didn't have kids. And so when I think my most challenging time became when I was having kids, and, just this second layer of who needs me, right? And so, I'm needed as a wife, I'm needed as a mom, I'm needed as a realtor, I'm needed as a counselor for your clients, right? You have so many people kind of like pawing at you, that I really started to lose like my sense of self, and really honestly probably, sad, like depressed about just, it sounds like it's amazing doing a ton of business. Even if you're not doing a ton of business, right? You're like, you've got these things going on in your head. And so it was just, I struggled through that, just not owning my own time. And it was my own fault, right? I'm the one taking the texts late at night. I'm the one, getting on the phone. I'm the one doing all those things. But um, yeah, it was a struggle. And there wasn't anybody that I connected with that was really talking about that. I also felt guilted if I wanted to pick up my kids. They're like, oh, you're a mom. You're gonna, you're gonna pick up your kids. Okay. Call me right away. And you're like, oh my gosh. Like, I don't know. It was just, I think most people don't talk about that it is difficult. And so I'm glad you asked that question because it is definitely all part of our journeys. It's like we think it's the destination we want to get to, this many sales, this many deals, when really I think what we need to learn is how do we enjoy the journey more instead of just the destination.
We talked earlier about just it being a moral challenge, right? Because you're
Yeah.
morally obligated to your family and your children, and obviously you want to be with them as well, but there is this like deep seated moral obligation to them. And then simultaneously, you have like an ethical obligation to your clients. And of course, your kids are the most important thing in your life, but when a buyer or seller is moving, buying and selling is the most important thing going on in their life at that time. And so you, man, like the conflict is real and
Yeah.
it's really hard. And we all struggle through it. But um, how did how did like what would be something that got you through that? Would you say?
Yeah. I think one of the things is that I was really bad about thinking everyone else is doing better than me. Like this person's a better mom. And like social media just makes this like way worse, right? But, oh, everybody sells more houses than me. Oh, their team is like better. People are dying to join their team, like whatever it was. And I had this person say this to me one time, and I just thought it really helped me reframe what my standards were. Instead of putting everybody else on a pedestal, I needed to like look within and be grateful and kind to myself about what I had achieved. And what they said was we were talking about sales, and they said they had sold 528 homes that year. And, I was trying to sell 300. And I was like, wow, 528 sales a year. Like, how do you do that? What? This is amazing. And he said, well, let's just put this into perspective. I'm going to sell 528 homes this year in a city with a metro of 1 million people. And you're in a city of 160,000 and you're going to sell 300. So when you put that into perspective and you think about it, I was like, yeah, I'm not doing so bad. Like, you're right. This is great. And so that helped me start to reframe how I looked at everything. And like I mentioned, that pedestal, I was really good at making that pedestal higher and higher and higher and putting everybody else on it instead of, maybe myself in a kind like a humbling way, not like, oh, I'm so amazing, but like, hey, let's just again celebrate that journey instead of, oh, you didn't hit some destination you made up anyway.
Yeah, it's so good. Stacy, we've got just a couple of minutes here. If you could go back in time to the, first year Stacy Peterson selling two homes, what advice would you give her?
Yeah. I would tell her to just go for it. Like, you don't need everything perfect. You don't need everything laid out. No one's going to make fun of you because you called someone and you said the wrong thing or they weren't ready to buy a house. Like, just go for it anyway. Just do it and it'll all work itself out. Instead of being worried about, you know, is your listing presentation right? And you don't even have a listing appointment, go get a listing appointment and then create it. Or go hold an open house and then create the packet. You'll know more about what people want when you're actually interacting with them than what you think creating it all behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's so true. I think back to myself in the beginning, and it's like, I had to wait for the business cards to come in or my email signature or whatever. And I just didn't feel like I could even communicate with anybody because I didn't have this one thing. And now it's like my email signature says Travis Anderson in it with my phone number, and
Right.
my I don't have business cards. It's like just
Yeah.
so Stacy, first year in real estate, just go do something.
Right. Exactly. Just go do it. It'll be just fine.
That's amazing. Yeah, so true. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want to share?
One thing I think that us as real estate agents don't talk about much, and that's why I really appreciated your question about, what's the bad part of the journey, right? Or what was the mud? And I think it's that, we don't necessarily talk about the things that are, bothering us or we're struggling with. And, I kind of struggled in silence for a long time. And so I think the best thing we can do is, find someone that is in it with you. Maybe they're in the same type of position as you. Maybe but they have a little bit different attributes. So when you're not doing well, you can lean on them and vice versa. They can lean on you and you push each other. And it's always more fun to run with someone else, right? But I think the most important piece of that is just being honest and vulnerable because, like the conversation I gave you about the deals, while that seems maybe like a little superficial, it was so much deeper than that to me because it helped me just reframe my thinking around everything that for real estate agents, it's always a mountain instead of, just the hills to get to it. We're always just looking at that mountain way far ahead, future casting. And so I think if you have someone that you can really lean into and create a friendship with and be authentic with, that is the best thing you could do.
I love that. A real estate buddy.
Yes, a real estate buddy.
So good.
Trademarked. We're trademarking
Yeah. Well, I'm so thankful for you doing this twice today. And
it.
I know you've got an appointment, but we'll have to do something soon. And I really appreciate you
Yeah.
being here.
Oh, thank you. It was an honor. I love it. And I appreciated getting to talk with you. So thank you.
Yep. Have a great day.
You too.